You don't need to be rich, you don't need to be a supermodel, and you don't need to play games to make a woman feel deeply connected to you. But if you want her to become wildly attached, even obsessed, you need to understand the core psychological drivers of female attraction. This isn't manipulation, this is awareness, because most men are blind to what truly moves a woman's heart. They focus on surface level charm and miss the depth that creates emotional addiction. So let me show you the 7 core things that make a woman not only fall for, but struggle to get you out of her mind. These are the triggers that activate her primal instincts to bond, chase, and commit. These are the habits, beliefs, and attitudes that flip a switch in her soul, unshakable purpose. Women are drawn to men who are going somewhere. Purpose is magnetic. When a man is on a mission, he becomes a force, not just a partner. He doesn't want to lead you. She wants to follow a man who leads his own life. Emotional self-control. When you don't react emotionally, you signal strength. If she tries to test you and you stay calm, cool, and grounded, she'll feel both challenged and safe. That emotional stability is intoxicating. Subtle mystery. Don't tell her everything. Don't always text back immediately. Let her wonder. Let her try to figure you out. Women fall in love in the space between certainty and curiosity. Give her just enough and hold the rest back. Presence over performance. Stop trying to impress. Start connecting. Look her in the eyes. Listen deeply. When you're fully present with her, without the need to win her, she feels like the only woman in the world. That's powerful. Consistent standards set boundaries. Be kind but firm. If you let her walk all over you, she loses respect. But if you hold your line with quiet confidence, she begins to chase your approval and craves your validation. Masculine. Energy with depth, the balance of strength and sensitivity. You're dominant without being aggressive. You're emotionally open but not emotionally needy. That blend, that's what makes her fantasize about you. Freedom from validation. You don't need her. You want her, but you don't need her. And that, ironically, is what makes her need you. When you're fulfilled within yourself, she senses it. She becomes drawn to your self-sufficiency like a moth to flame. This is not about tricks or manipulation. It's about mastery. Master these 7 traits and you won't have to chase women. They'll feel an emotional pull toward you that they can't quite explain, but they won't want to resist. She won't just want you. She'll need you. Women attach emotionally to men with strong purpose and direction because purpose signals strength, certainty, and inner leadership. At a deep logical level, women are biologically wired to respond to a man who knows who he is and where he's going. A man with direction doesn't need to announce it. He radiates it. It shows in how he walks, talks, carries himself, and makes decisions. He's not easily swayed by the opinions of others, and he doesn't get lost trying to please everyone. That silent conviction makes him emotionally magnetic. Purpose gives a man a gravitational pull. It's about being rich or having status, although those can be byproducts of purpose. It's about identity. A man who knows why he wakes up in the morning, who's chasing something greater than himself. He naturally commands attention and respect. He becomes the kind of man a woman can emotionally invest in because she knows he's not drifting. She knows he's anchored. Even if he fails, even if he's still on the path and hasn't yet arrived, the fact that he's moving forward gives her something to believe in. That belief in turn becomes attachment. Women want to feel safe, not just physically, but emotionally. A man without direction brings uncertainty, chaos, and confusion. One day he's motivated, the next day he's lost. One day he's talking about dreams, the next he's complaining about life. That inconsistency weakens emotional connection. In contrast, a man on a mission provides a kind of emotional safety net. Even if the world around him changes, he doesn't. His values stay firm, his vision stays focused, and that consistency allows a woman to relax and open herself emotionally without fear that he'll suddenly collapse or abandon a man's purpose. also defines how he navigates the relationship. He doesn't make a woman the center of his universe, and paradoxically, that's what makes her want him more. He prioritizes his mission, his work, his goals, not in a cold or neglectful way, but in a grounded and mature way. He knows that to give his best to a woman, he must first be full in himself. That fullness doesn't come from validation or approval, it comes from chasing something meaningful. And when she sees that, she becomes more than just a romantic partner, she becomes a supporter of something bigger. That sense of alignment creates a powerful bond. This doesn't mean a man has to be perfect or have it all figured out. Women aren't looking for finished products. They're looking for men who are committed to growth, who keep moving forward even when it's hard. Purpose is not about ego, it's about presence. It's about the man who keeps showing up for his life, who refuses to be passive, who is actively shaping his future. That kind of man inspires trust. He doesn't have to force attraction. He becomes naturally attractive through the way life's purpose also shapes how a man handles adversity. When life throws challenges at him, he doesn't fall apart. He adjusts, he adapts, but he keeps going. That resilience builds emotional gravity. A woman sees how he handles pressure, how he makes hard decisions, and how he doesn't let setbacks define him. That earns her respect, and respect is the root of deep emotional attachment. Without respect, love fades. With respect, love deepens. And nothing earns respect like watching a man stand tall in the face of difficulty in relationships. A man with purpose doesn't get needy. He doesn't beg for attention or get shaken when a woman pulls back. He doesn't fall into desperate patterns because his validation doesn't come from her, it comes from living in alignment with what matters to him. That non-neediness creates space for desire to grow. A woman starts thinking about him more when he's not always available, not because he's playing games, but because he's busy doing what he's meant to do. His time becomes valuable, his attention becomes rare, and what's rare becomes desired. This is why some women say there was just something about him. That something is often purpose. It's that unexplainable confidence, that sense of forward momentum, that clarity of identity. It's how he speaks with intention, listens with depth, and moves through the world with quiet power. He doesn't chase approval, and yet he gets it. He doesn't seek to be the center of attention, but people naturally gravitate toward him because people, especially women, are drawn to certainty in a world full of noise. When a woman finds a man with a strong sense of direction, she begins to emotionally root herself in his energy. She attaches because she senses a future. She becomes more loyal, more vulnerable, more committed because she knows she's not attaching to someone who's lost, she's attaching to someone who is becoming. She's not trying to fix him, she's joining him. And that emotional partnership built not on dependency but on shared movement is what makes her feel something powerful. Not just love, not just desire, but devotion. And that's the kind of connection that doesn't fade with time. That's the kind of bond that creates obsession, not in a toxic way, but in a deep, lasting way. Because once a woman feels emotionally anchored to a man with purpose, she stops looking for better. She knows she's already found the rarest thing of all, a man who is leading his life and inviting her to walk beside him. Emotional self-control makes a man feel safe and irresistible because it signals strength, stability, and inner mastery. In a world where emotional chaos is common, a man who can stay grounded in the middle of pressure stands out. He becomes a calming force, someone who doesn't just react to everything but instead responds with clarity and purpose. This isn't about being emotionless, it's about being emotionally disciplined. A man who feels deeply but chooses wisely when and how to express those emotions has power. And that power is incredibly attractive to women. Women are emotional beings by nature. They feel things deeply, sense changes in energy, and are often more emotionally expressive than men. And when they're around a man who's easily rattled, reactive, or unstable, it creates an environment of uncertainty. She can't relax, she can't trust, she feels like she has to manage not only her own emotional state, but also his. Over time, this becomes exhausting and emotional distance begins to grow. But when she's around a man who can hold his emotional frame, who doesn't get pulled into every mood swing or emotional drama, she begins to feel safe. That safety opens the door for emotional intimacy. A man with emotional self-restraint is like an anchor in the storm. When she's upset, he mirror her chaos. He listens, he stays calm, he might empathize, but he doesn't absorb her emotions and make them his own. He doesn't try to fix her or silence her feelings. He lets her feel what she needs to feel while remaining centered in his own emotional space. That presence makes him deeply attractive because he's not trying to control her, but he's clearly in control of himself. That's rare, and it's something women crave. This control also shows up in how a man handles instead of yelling, blaming, or shutting down, he communicates with maturity. He doesn't let ego run the conversation. He pauses when he's triggered. He reflects instead of exploding. This kind of response shows he's not a slave to his emotions. He's a master of them. And when a woman sees that, it earns her respect. It tells her that this is a man she can build with, a man she can lean on, a man who won't fall apart when things get hard. Emotional self-control is also what separates confidence from arrogance. A confident man doesn't need to boast or dominate. He doesn't need to win every argument or prove his worth. His quiet restraint is often more powerful than loud displays because restraint shows that he's secure. It shows he doesn't need external approval to feel worthy. He's validated from within. That kind of energy is irresistible to women because it's so uncommon. Most men either suppress emotions entirely or are ruled by them. The few who walk the middle path, feeling everything but expressing only what's necessary, are seen as emotionally mature and deeply attractive. In dating, this emotional maturity becomes a game changer. If she pulls back, tests his confidence, or tries to provoke a reaction, he doesn't panic, he doesn't chase, he doesn't beg. He maintains his center. That self-possession is powerful. It creates polarity. The more she senses he won't be easily moved, the more she feels pulled toward him. It's not about playing hard to get, it's about being hard to shake. And that emotional toughness, combined with calm presence, makes a man unforgettable. Even in day-to-day interactions, emotional self-control creates moments of attraction. When a man can take a joke without getting defensive, he shows strength. When he can lead a conversation without overpowering it, he shows balance. When he can express his feelings without losing his cool, he shows depth. All of these traits send the message, I'm safe, I'm solid, I won't fall apart. And that message allows a woman to soften, to open up, and to feel drawn in deeper. Women also attach emotionally to the man who can provide emotional consistency. If one day he's sweet and present, and the next he's cold and distant, that instability becomes a threat to her nervous system. But if she knows he's emotionally steady, regardless of external circumstances, she begins to trust more. She lets go of the need to protect herself and starts investing more of her heart. Emotional consistency creates the foundation for emotional intimacy, and emotional intimacy is what leads to long-term attraction. A man with emotional self-control also creates space for playfulness and passion. Because he's not constantly on edge, he can laugh easily, flirt with ease, and shift between intensity and lightness effortlessly. He's not trying to manage his mood every second because he already owns it. And when a woman sees that, she relaxes. She doesn't have to manage the dynamic. She just gets to enjoy the energy. That freedom becomes a part of the attraction. It's not just who he is, it's how she feels when she's around him. Safe, seen, desired, and completely drawn in. Ultimately, emotional self-control is what separates a man who gets momentary attention from a man who stays on her mind. It's not about suppressing emotions or pretending to be stoic. It's about knowing yourself so deeply that emotions don't control your actions, they inform them. It's about being the calm in the storm, the steady hand in chaos, the grounded presence in a world full of emotional noise. And once a woman experiences that, she won't want to let it go. Mystery fuels emotional curiosity and long-term attraction because it activates a woman's imagination and emotional investment. When a man is slightly unpredictable, when he holds something back, when she can't quite figure him out, it triggers a psychological response that keeps her intrigued and emotionally engaged. This isn't about playing games or being manipulative. It's about understanding a fundamental truth of human nature. We value what we have to work to understand. When everything is revealed too quickly, attraction fades just as fast. But when a man reveals himself gradually in layers, he keeps her attention and deepens the bond over time. Attraction begins in the mind. Before a woman falls in love with a man's body or lifestyle, she falls in love with the way he makes her feel. And curiosity is one of the most powerful emotional states she can experience. When she's curious about you, she thinks about you. When she thinks about you, she begins to emotionally attach to the version of you she builds in her imagination, and often the man she imagines is more compelling than any man who reveals everything all at once. That emotional gap between what she knows and what she wants to know is where obsession begins. Mystery doesn't mean being vague or dishonest. It means being intentional about what you reveal and when. A man who speaks with precision but doesn't over-explain, who shares parts of himself without unloading everything, creates an air of intrigue. He's open enough to build trust, but reserved enough to spark desire. He's not emotionally unavailable. He's emotionally composed. He lets her discover him rather than broadcasting everything immediately. That journey of discovery becomes part of the attraction itself. She feels like she's earning his truth, not being handed it. And what we earn, we value more. A mysterious man doesn't always explain his moves. He's kind and direct, but he doesn't seek constant validation. He's present in the moment, but there's always a part of him that feels just slightly out of reach. That emotional distance doesn't push a woman away, it pulls her in. She wonders what he's thinking. She replays his words. She starts to invest emotionally because she's trying to understand him. That emotional work creates a stronger connection than forced closeness ever could. When she doesn't know everything about him, she keeps paying attention. In long-term attraction, mystery becomes even more important. Most relationships start with chemistry but lose momentum when things become too predictable. But when a man maintains his individuality, when he keeps growing, when he continues to surprise her with depth she hadn't seen before, the relationship stays alive. He doesn't become a routine, he becomes a source of emotional stimulation. She doesn't feel like she's reached the end of the story. She feels like she's in the middle of an unfolding narrative. And that keeps her emotionally invested. Mystery also creates space for her to project. And that projection, while it may not be entirely accurate, is part of emotional bonding. She fills in the blanks with hope, desire, and imagination. She wonders what makes him tick, why he does things a certain way, what he's like when no one's watching. And in that wondering, she forms a connection, not just with who he is, but with who she imagines he could be. That connection is deeper than surface level attraction. It touches her inner world, her fantasies, and her emotions. A man who keeps mystery alive is not playing hard to get, he simply lives with intention. He has his own life, his own priorities, and his own space. He doesn't drop everything to be constantly available. And that independence, when combined with genuine affection, creates polarity. She knows he cares, but she also knows he won't be easily conquered. He's not rushing to define the relationship or to lay all his cards on the table. He's letting things unfold naturally, giving her the time and space to feel, wonder, and fall. In communication, mystery means speaking with purpose. It means not always giving away the punchline. Sometimes it's better to let silence linger, to answer a question with a smile, to share something meaningful, but not everything at once. When a man communicates like this, he becomes unforgettable. His words echo in her mind because she feels like there's more beneath the surface, and when she senses that depth, she wants to dive in. That's where emotional curiosity begins to evolve into emotional attachment. Even in physical connection, mystery matters. A man who doesn't rush into intimacy, who takes his time, who teases with touch and eye contact rather than instantly escalating, builds anticipation. That anticipation amplifies desire. It makes every moment feel more intense. She begins to associate his presence with emotional tension, and that tension becomes addictive. The more she wants to, the more she wants to feel, and the more she desires the man who created that experience. Mystery also keeps a man from becoming ordinary. Most men try to impress by revealing everything too soon. They want to be liked, so they over-explain, overshare, and over-pursue. But that approach removes the emotional chase, and without a chase, desire dies. A man who knows his worth doesn't overcompensate. He reveals what's real and keeps the rest sacred, not to manipulate, but to protect his energy. That sacredness is what makes him special. And when a woman senses that, she becomes emotionally hooked, not because she's being tricked, but because she's been truly intrigued. Mystery, when done with authenticity and self-respect, doesn't just spark attraction, it sustains it. It keeps her guessing, feeling, wondering, and ultimately loving more deeply. Because when a man can keep surprising her with his depth, she never stops being drawn to him. And that emotional gravity is what makes mystery one of the most powerful forces in human connection. Deep, present connection beats superficial charm, because charm may capture attention, but true presence captures the heart. A man can be witty, polished, and socially skilled, but if he's not emotionally present, it won't lead to lasting attraction. Presence is rare. It's the ability to be fully in the moment with your attention, your energy, your listening, and your intention. When a man is present, a woman feels seen, not just looked at, not just complimented, but seen on a deeper level. That experience stays with her. It creates emotional resonance. And in a world where most conversations are surface level and distracted, that depth stands out like a flame in the dark. Superficial charm can be impressive in the short term. It's often loud, clever, and polished. It makes people laugh and feel good in the moment, but it's also often transactional. Charm tries to get something: approval, attention, validation. It's performance-based. It relies on tactics and timing. And while it might win a few smiles, it rarely wins deep emotional loyalty, because at its core, it's more about being liked than being real. A woman may be entertained by it, but she won't build trust from it. She may enjoy the show, but she won't invest herself in the actor. A deep, present connection, however, is built on authenticity. It's the man who isn't trying to impress, but simply is. He brings his full attention into the interaction. He's not looking at his phone. He's not waiting for his turn to speak. He's listening not just to her words, but to her tone, her body language, her energy. He's engaged with her as a human being, not as a prize or a test. That kind of attention is disarming. It breaks down her walls because it shows that he's not performing, he's connecting. This presence creates emotional safety. A woman feels like she can let her guard down. She doesn't feel judged, rushed, or manipulated. She feels heard. And when a woman feels heard, she begins to open up emotionally. That openness creates a bond that goes far beyond appearances or charm. It builds intimacy, and intimacy is what keeps attraction alive long after the initial spark fades. Most people are so busy trying to be liked that they forget to connect. But a man who slows down and truly sees, a woman creates a moment that lingers in her memory, because real presence is unforgettable. When a man is deeply present, he's also in touch with himself. He's not just focused on saying the right thing. He's aware of how he feels, what he values, and what kind of energy he's bringing into the interaction. That self-awareness creates confidence, not the kind of fake confidence that comes from memorized lines or forced bravado, but the quiet, grounded kind that says, I'm comfortable with who I am. That kind of man doesn't need to dominate the conversation. He's powerful without needing to prove it. And that internal stillness creates emotional gravity. Women are incredibly intuitive. They can feel when a man is truly there with them versus when he's just going through the motions. A charming man who isn't emotionally present might get a few laughs, but he'll leave her feeling empty. A man who's deeply present, even if he says less, will leave her feeling full. She'll feel connected not just to him but to herself, because being around someone who's present makes you feel more alive. It pulls you out of your head and into your heart. And that emotional experience is what forms true attraction. Presence also means being okay with silence. You don't need to fill every moment with clever words or jokes. Sometimes the most powerful connection happens in the pauses, when you're just looking into her eyes, sharing space, breathing together. Those moments speak louder than charm ever could. Because charm is noise and presence is signal. Charm tries to impress. Presence invites connection. And people are starving for connection in a world that's full of distractions. A man who is truly present doesn't chase approval. He doesn't shapeshift to fit what he thinks she wants. He stays rooted in his truth and meets her where she is. If there's alignment, it grows naturally. If not, he moves on without bitterness or neediness. That grounded approach builds trust. She knows he's not just telling her what she wants to hear, as himself, and that authenticity is magnetic because it's not trying to control the outcome. It's offering a real experience. When a woman feels deeply connected, she becomes emotionally invested. That's where true attraction takes root. Not in the outer layers, but in the inner world. She remembers how she felt in his presence. She replays the conversation. She thinks about the way he listened, the way he looked at her, the way he made her feel completely accepted. That emotional imprint lasts far longer than any clever line or rehearsed story. It's what makes her want more, not more in entertainment, but more of him. In the end, charm may start the fire, but presence keeps it burning. It's not about trying to be unforgettable. It's about being fully there. A deep, present connection can't be faked. It can't be rushed. But once it's created, it becomes the foundation of something real. Something strong enough to carry attraction beyond the moment and into something lasting. Men who maintain strong boundaries are respected and desired because boundaries communicate self-worth, clarity, and emotional strength. In a world where many people bend, twist, and reshape themselves just to be liked, the man who knows his limits and enforces them without apology stands out. He's not mean, aggressive, or controlling. He simply honors his time, energy, and values. That level of self-respect earns the admiration of others, especially women. Very clearly shows that he's not desperate for approval. He's not seeking to please everyone. He's not afraid of confrontation or rejection. Instead, he's grounded in who he is and what he stands for. A man with strong boundaries doesn't say yes just to avoid conflict. He says yes when it aligns with his principles, and he says no when it doesn't, and he says it without guilt. That emotional firmness creates a kind of invisible strength. People feel it. Women feel it. They may not always like it in the moment, especially if it challenges their expectations, but they respect it deeply because it signals maturity. It shows that he can handle pressure without folding. That kind of consistency is rare, and what's rare is often the most desirable. Women are naturally drawn to strength, not just physical, but psychological and emotional strength. A man with boundaries doesn't allow himself to be manipulated, guilt-tripped, or coerced. He's not cruel, but he's firm, and that firmness creates a safe container. She knows he won't be swayed by every mood swing or emotional plea. He won't sacrifice his dignity for temporary harmony. That kind of man earns trust. She may test his boundaries, but when he holds them, she feels secure. She knows she's dealing with someone who knows himself and won't betray that self for superficial connection. Boundaries also create polarity. When a man stands firm in his truth, it creates contrast. It shows he's not trying to blend in or be nice at the cost of authenticity. He's willing to risk being misunderstood in order to stay aligned. That kind of integrity is magnetic, is attractive because it suggests he can lead, protect, and make decisions, not just follow or comply. In relationships, this leadership energy is powerful. It invites respect, it inspires admiration, and when combined with emotional intelligence, it creates deep, lasting desire. A man with strong boundaries doesn't lose himself in relationships. He brings his full self, but he doesn't abandon his identity to keep someone else happy. He continues to pursue his passions, his friendships, and his purpose. He's not afraid to walk away if a relationship violates his core values. A willingness to walk away is what gives his presence weight. He doesn't have to threaten or demand anything. His boundary speaks for itself. And that unspoken strength creates a sense of challenge that keeps attraction alive. When a man lacks boundaries, it leads to resentment, frustration, and emotional instability. He says yes when he means no. He avoids conflict but ends up feeling controlled. Over time, this erodes respect, not just from others, but from himself. Women may initially enjoy the compliance, but eventually they lose interest. Because deep down, nobody is truly attracted to weakness. Attraction thrives in tension. In the dance between freedom and connection, boundaries protect that tension. They ensure the man doesn't collapse into the relationship, but instead brings strength and structure to it. Boundaries also signal that a man has standards. He doesn't tolerate disrespect. He doesn't chase people who aren't reciprocating. He doesn't waste energy proving his worth to those who can't see it. He values his time and protects his peace. That self-respect is highly attractive. It makes others want to earn his time rather than expect it freely. It creates a dynamic where his attention becomes meaningful, not because he withholds it, but because he doesn't give it away carelessly. Strong boundaries also reflect emotional maturity. A man who sets boundaries understands his own emotions. He knows what triggers him. He knows where his limits are, and he communicates them clearly. He doesn't explode. He doesn't withdraw. He asserts himself calmly but firmly. That ability to self-regulate is powerful. It creates a sense of safety for the people around him. They know where they stand. They know what he will and won't accept. That clarity eliminates confusion and builds trust. Women feel most attracted to a man who knows who he is and refuses to betray that. She might push against his limits sometimes, not out of malice, but to see if he's real. She wants to know that when things get difficult, he won't fold. She wants to see that his backbone isn't just for show, and when he holds firm, not with anger, but with confidence, it triggers deep respect and desire, because she knows she can't control him. And paradoxically, that makes her feel more free with him. His boundaries give her space to relax, knowing she's with someone who won't lose himself in trying to keep her. In every interaction, a man with boundaries communicates one powerful truth: I value myself. That truth creates gravity. It creates attraction, and it builds relationships that are based not on fear or control, but on mutual respect and real connection. Boundaries don't push people away. They attract the right ones and repel the wrong ones. And that kind of clarity is not only desirable, it's essential. Non-neediness creates emotional dependence in the woman because it subtly shifts the dynamic of desire and emotional pursuit. When a man is not emotionally dependent on a woman for validation, attention, or happiness, he becomes the emotional anchor in the connection. He is centered, composed, and internally fulfilled, which creates a powerful contrast to the typical interactions many women are used to. Most people, men and women alike, sense when someone needs something from them, and it often creates pressure or resistance. But when a man radiates the energy of self-sufficiency, it invites the woman to lean in emotionally. She doesn't feel chased, she feels intrigued, challenged, and eventually emotionally invested. A non-needy man doesn't seek permission to be himself. He isn't driven by the fear of rejection, nor does he overextend himself in an attempt to gain approval. That kind of emotional independence is magnetic because it signals strength, confidence, and abundance. The woman starts to sense that he is whole without her, but still chooses to engage with her. That choice made freely without desperation, carries a heavy emotional weight. It makes her feel special, not because she filled a void in him, but because she earned a place beside someone who didn't need anyone in the first place. This emotional dynamic shifts the usual balance of power. In many relationships, men often overinvest too early, smothering the woman with attention, availability, and compliments in the hope of securing her affection. But ironically, the more he gives from a place of need, the less she values it. It's not because women are cruel. It's because humans naturally undervalue what is freely and overly available. When a man is non-needy, he operates from a position of quiet power. He's not withholding, he's simply not dependent. That distinction makes all the difference. His interest is real but not desperate. His affection is genuine but not transactional. And that energy plants the seeds of emotional dependency in the woman. She starts to notice that he's not checking in constantly. He's not always available. He has things going on, hobbies, passions, goals, and friendships. He enjoys her company but doesn't need her to feel whole. This creates a subtle but powerful psychological effect. Her mind begins to drift toward him more often. She starts wondering what he's doing, who he's with, what he's thinking. She begins to chase emotional closeness, not because he asked her to, but because he didn't. The emotional vacuum his non-neediness creates draws her in, not out of manipulation, but out of curiosity and longing. Women fall in love with the experience of a man, not just who he is, but how he makes them feel. And when a woman is with a man who doesn't need her but deeply values her, she feels emotionally safe yet challenged. She feels like she has to earn his emotional intimacy, and that process of earning creates emotional bonding. The moment a man becomes needy or chasing, overgiving, or emotionally overreaching, he kills the tension that makes romantic desire possible. But a man who stands in his own emotional strength naturally draws a woman deeper into his world. Non-neediness also fosters respect. A woman might be attracted to looks or charm, but what makes her emotionally attached is the presence of masculine self-control and autonomy. A man who is non-needy doesn't beg for time, reassurance, or constant affirmation. He communicates his standards calmly, walks away when they're violated, and lives in alignment with his values. That consistency is rare. It makes her feel emotionally secure, while simultaneously igniting her desire to be closer to him. She starts to depend on his grounded presence. She starts to miss the way he carries himself, the way he leads conversations, the way he makes her feel without ever needing her to fill an emotional hole. Over time, this non-neediness turns into gravity. She starts to orbit him emotionally. His attention becomes a reward, not because he withholds it manipulatively, but because he gives it from a place of freedom, not dependence. This makes her feel chosen, not trapped. She doesn't feel like he needs her to function, and that creates a sense of mystery and allure. Emotional independence is intoxicating because it allows the woman to relax into her own feelings without feeling smothered or responsible for his emotions. In that space, she bonds deeper. She starts to crave him, not because he demanded it, but because he created the conditions for it to grow naturally. A non-needy man isn't emotionally cold. He is emotionally abundant. He has processed his own insecurities, healed his past wounds, and no longer seeks a woman to complete him. He enjoys intimacy but doesn't chase it. He gives love but he doesn't beg for it. He is open to connection but not desperate for attachment. That energy flips the script. She finds herself opening up more, giving more, initiating more, because the emotional contrast between his inner fulfillment and the average man's emotional hunger is undeniable. Ultimately, a woman becomes emotionally dependent on the man who doesn't make her responsible for his happiness, but does allow her to add to it. That's what non-neediness does. It sets the foundation for real emotional polarity. It allows space for her desire to grow, for her feelings to deepen, and for her emotional attachment to become profound and lasting. The man who doesn't need her attention ends up getting the most of it, not because he took it, but because she freely gave it. So if you want to understand what truly makes a woman wildly attached, even obsessed, it's not about playing games or pretending to be someone you're not. It's about becoming a man with depth, strength, presence, and self-respect. It's about standing in your power, living with purpose, and connecting from a place of wholeness, not need. Women don't bond deeply with surface, double charm, or forced effort. They attach to men who know who they are, who don't chase, who lead with quiet confidence, and who create a space where she can feel seen, safe, and challenged. Be that man, not for her, but for you. And when you do, the right woman won't just want you, she'll feel you. She'll crave your presence. She'll choose you over and over again. Not because she has to, but because she can't imagine not having you in her world.